Good afternoon, everyone. Futures Brizio here. It is now 1:45 on Friday, October 4th. Hope everybody's having a great Friday, wrapping up a decent week. Just wanted to provide you kind of an early afternoon update on the markets here. So, of course, as always, before we get into it, please make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave any questions or comments you have down below. I really appreciate it, and I love the feedback. I get very few comments. I don't know why, but so be it. So let's just jump right in. First, we'll take a look at crude oil because that's the kind of the biggest mover during the day session here. So if we reset, and of course you can watch my video from yesterday, but here's the daily chart of the cash WTI oil market. And as I was saying yesterday, if we could get a daily close above this daily trend line, then I would think prices are going to go quite a bit higher. And as you can see, we definitely did get that close here. This was yesterday's candle right here, very firm close. And then we are following through today with more upside. We did not get that retest back to the trend line, which is fine. But that just points to the fact that there's very strong buying. And remember, as I had said, the reason for this is basically twofold. There's fundamental reasons just with Middle East conflicts and stuff that are driving oil prices. But as I had stated earlier this week and last week, we also had this big weekly level down here between about $63 and $68 a barrel. The price came into it after this, on this daily trend line. After this last swing, price came down and tapped into this area back at the end of September, so about 10 days or so ago. And it's been going up ever since. And price came in after it hit that area, put in a higher low right here, tried to come back lower, failed, put in this higher low, and has now broken the upside to the upside over the trend line. Okay, so that is pretty much what I thought was going to happen. So I don't think there's anything to stop oil from going up until, at least somewhere up here around $85 or so. We can see we have multiple layers of support here, resistance. We have, resistance at, $85. We have more resistance here at $87.50 and then more up here at $95. So we'll have to see how far this goes. But I do think oil has made the turn. I am currently holding a long position there. So I'm going to probably just hold that and just leave it and maybe even add to it on pullbacks next week. So, so that's kind of the bigger picture with oil. I think certainly has some room to go here to the upside. We probably could put like a weekly trend line right here. So here's a weekly trend line. So that would put price up somewhere around about $80 before it would run into this overhead trend line. So we'll have to see what happens. This might be a management spot for the trade once it taps this trend line on the weekly chart. But I don't think that will, hold. But there could be some selling or some profit taking going on around this $80 mark. So we'll see what happens with that if, again, if we want to poke this weekly trend line on here, connecting these three highs right here. Let's see if we get a fourth tap on it back up around this area. So we'll see how that goes next week. But at least between now and then, that would be about $5 more a gallon barrel that it would go up minimum before it would run into any selling pressure. So, all right, so on to copper. Copper has done nothing. As I was stating yesterday, actually, let me go over to the futures. So here's the futures for copper, and these are the levels I drew in yesterday that I was talking about. So we basically have this swing low that led to this high that poked into this area up higher that goes out of my screen view here. So we had this swing. That's what this box represents, the break of structure on that area to the downside. We came back into this area right here. We held that, went up, retraced, came back down, hit this area again. And now, since yesterday, we've just been trading. This is the 4-hour chart. we've just been trading in between these two levels. So you can see today this was, the 4-hour candle from this morning between like 8 and noon Eastern. You can see price tried to pop back up into here, came back into this zone, failed to close above it, came back, closed inside the range, tried to go lower, but eventually it closed with a pretty big indecision. And here we are now, and it's obviously not going to do anything the rest of today. So it'll be interesting to see, but copper has essentially gone nowhere fast since yesterday. So it's really pretty much done nothing. So we'll have to see what's going on. What goes on with copper. As you can see, again, back here if we go to the daily chart, this was that wick we saw on the futures chart that tapped into this little supply zone here. Price definitely reacted off of there. And this area, had not been mitigated to the downside if you're an imbalance trader. So it came up here and it did mitigate this area. The question now is, do we get follow through selling below, this zone? So here on the 4-hour chart, we have this trend line, and then we have this was that secondary layer of support. It kind of lines up with the trend line. So if we see price come down, drop below this trend line, below this box right here, then I think we'll probably see lower prices. But we'll have to see if this area holds. I mean, we might breach the trend line, but as long as we don't close below this level, it could just be like a liquidity sweep and we go higher. But again, we did breach this. We did mitigate this supply zone up here that had some imbalance when it pulled away from here. So it is quite possible we see prices go lower from here. But I'm not ready to, like I said yesterday, throw in the towel on the longs on copper yet. So we'll have to just see. But right now I'm just kind of neutral, standing aside, watching it until it decides what it wants to do. If it does start to go higher again, then it will go right through this area the next time, and it will head up towards these more extreme highs way up here. So, but either way, I'd play it either way. I mean, if it breaks to the downside, then there's, I think, certainly plenty of downside potential, at least back into, maybe this area down here, if not back at these lows. So, we'll just have to see. But like I said, I'm just pretty neutral on copper right at the moment. And we'll just watch it and see what it does next week to see if there's any further motion. But you can see there's been no willingness to break it out of this area since yesterday. The large institutional players are just not doing anything with this right at the moment. So this is just drifting around with a little bit of retail noise, and that's it. So wait and see on copper. I haven't decided either way. I think could definitely be a case for either direction, but we'll see how it does. All right, on to natural gas. So I did have a trade on natural gas long that I closed. Was that this morning or yesterday? I don't remember now. They all blend together, but you can see what's happening here. So here's the 4-hour chart of the cash and natural gas chart. You can see we're holding this trend line quite nicely. Now we're sitting right at the trend line, and much like copper, this trend line also intersects with this support level here. So if we drop to the 1-hour chart, we have this last major pullback, and that's where price is sitting right now, at the trend line and at this support level. So if this holds and we get some bullish price action back up, then I believe we'll make another run higher here. And if we zoom out to the daily chart, we came up and had a reaction off of these highs right here. We have this one over here. We have it back here, back here, back here, going back into last year, more than a year ago. And price definitely has reacted. But as long as it holds this area and this trend line, I think this is just a pullback area. I think if it goes higher, this area here where we've got this high and this one and this area over here, which is a little bit lower, but basically it was support now turned into resistance. I think this is a better area to target right up here. And quite frankly, it could go higher. We have this whole zone here between this extreme high and all of these swings in here. But in the short term, if this trend line and this level hold here on the 4-hour to daily chart, then I'd still be looking for longs this thing back up towards at least towards this area here, this lower horizontal line. So if we look at it on the futures, here it is on the futures. So here's the 4-hour. Now on this one, it hasn't really shown price coming all the way back to this level. Okay, so it is a different view. Go back to the 4-hour here. Well, I guess it's really not. So here, this area right here would be the equivalent level to what you see here, where I have this box drawn. So again, it's a futures versus a cash market. So it looks similar, but it's not exact. But you could probably throw the same trend line even on here. But on here it looks a little bit more bearish because it looks like we've actually broken the trend line. So, let's see what happens with this one. We could get a further sell-off back towards this area. You can see we do have this big imbalance candle. But I view this imbalance candle has already been filled because here's the imbalance candle. And then we had this pullback with this wick that cut this thing right in half before it went up, made a new high. So to me, this has already been mitigated. So we'll see. We could see a further push lower on this, maybe back towards this area here, and we'll see what happens. So there's a little different view here. That's why I like looking at the CFD. I like looking at the cash market versus the futures market chart sometimes, because sometimes the CFDs are a little bit more smooth and easier to look at. And there's more price history here too. Now we did have a breach of this trend line back here, but price did recover. So I'm still looking at this as the preferred drawing of this trend line, even though we did have a breach here, a little liquidity grab back here a few weeks back. But for the most part, it's held this trend line really nice. So again, there is possibility we see a little bit more sell down. And again, another area, just as I'm looking at this, even though this imbalance here was mitigated, and you can kind of see it right here. You can see it on the CFD chart. Here's that big candle. We had that wick. That's what I just showed you on the futures chart. But this area itself now becomes a potential area to look at. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see price wick down, and again, or maybe even close below this trend line down and tap this area, and then have it go up. Which is kind of like what we saw right here, right? Where it did close below, but that was just tapping some liquidity down below here, and then it went. So, we could see price just kind of come down to this area, and then start to go higher. So I think ultimately, for me, again, it's all about the trend line in these two levels. If we get a close below this box here, then definitely we're going lower, because I don't think this area will hold, because it's already been mitigated. But this area right here still has potential. And that makes sense, because if you think about it from a retail standpoint, this area right here is, just like a support area, like a classic retail support and resistance area right here. So this is targeted a lot by retail traders like me to come back to and then buy it off of here. Well, you may very well see a liquidity sweep. So price comes down to here, they try to buy it, maybe you get a little bit of upside push, and then they sell it off, break below there, take out all the stop loss orders that are sitting just below this box, and then take it down to the next layer down here, and then they go higher. So this is an interesting place, but I'm still bullish on this. Like I said, if it holds this layer right in here, then I'd probably be looking for prices to continue to go higher. And then ultimately, this was the area on the futures chart I had drawn right here. This is further down. A break below here certainly would indicate lower prices. So you kind of got a few layers to look at right now on this one. And to me, this area right here, I'm actually going to remove this box. Get rid of this arrow too. Get rid of this box here. This is like the 1 hour chart. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm just going to kind of look at these two levels. Let's go back to the 4. Okay, I'm just going to look at these two levels right here, okay, as kind of my areas to target. And again, I think this one's already been mitigated. So if this is going to go higher, I don't think price will make it down here. I think it's been mitigated already. So this area potentially has not, although we've got these two wicks right here. I don't know. So again, I'm still at least short-term bullish in natural gas, but market will have to show its hand next week and see what it wants to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more selling below this trend line. Again, the large players watch these trend lines too, and they watch these support levels. And this is where they're going to target areas of liquidity to go higher. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a break below here and, maybe wick out down in between these two zones and then go higher. But ultimately, as long as we hold this level in here, this is similar to copper. If we hold, this level inside here and we don't break below here, then I do think it will eventually go higher. So, but obviously it's not going to happen today. So, something to watch for next week. And then finally, S&P. Again, not really doing a whole heck of a lot. It did try to go higher today on news. We had non-farm payroll today. This was the news this morning. Came out 8:30. So basically, right in here. Market spiked higher, and it's now since pulled back, and it's almost back to where it started. So again, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now that NFP is not weighing as heavily as it would have normally because, again, U.S. presidential elections and Middle East turmoil. Apparently the port strike has been, at least they have a tentative agreement on that big port strike. So that's good news, and that actually should support the market, although it didn't really have much of an effect when they announced it. But that is, one variable kind of off the table. But again, I had these arrows from yesterday looking at a potential deeper sell-off before the price goes up. That may still happen. I don't know. But I haven't taken any S&P trades. This to me, is just not very interesting. I'd much rather trade in these commodities and natural gas, copper, oil. I think they're a little bit more plain to see right now. But ultimately, if this uptrend is going to continue in the S&P, we'll probably need to see a little bit more, evidence that it wants to go higher. I guess you could say, if you're going to draw a trend line right here, that we did break the trend line right here. So maybe from here it will retest and go higher. We'll see. But again, nothing's going to happen today, though, as it's now 2 o'clock and it's a Friday, and nothing's going to happen really the rest of the day today. So, keep watching this, but it's just not one of my favorite markets to trade. But I do think it's important to watch it. And if there's something obvious that jumps off the page at me, I certainly will take it. But we didn't really get that. There was no follow through on the NFP numbers today, even though at least on the surface they were bullish. There was no follow through, as you can see. And so that's a little disappointing. But anyways, I think a lot of that is just underlying currents in the market that are just kind of superseding what NFP would normally do. So, all right, so that's it. So again, natural gas, I'm still bullish on this for a while. Copper, I'm neutral on right now, and oil, I'm still bullish on, and for at least the near future. So, all right. So, anyways, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope you had a great week. And again, make sure you like the video, leave comments, subscribe to the channel. Questions or comments, leave them down below on anything. I appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys watching. And I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week. Thanks.